All right, today we're going to be starting the judicial branch. All right, so this is our last of the three branches to kind of dive into. We have done the legislative and we've done the executive, and so our third and final branch to talk about is judicial. All right, and we know because it is on the wall to your right that the judicial branch, their job is to interpret the law. Okay, so you got this fill in the blank section on your note sheet. So let's see if we can fill it in. All right. Article 3 of the United States Constitution and Article 4 of the NC Constitution set up the judicial branch. Please make sure you're filling this in as I go over it. The main role of the judicial branch is to, I'm not going to tell you this one because you should already know, the judicial branch is made up of courts and judges. All right, you have to have a court to interpret the law in, and you have to have a judge sitting in the room to put down a sentence or make sure that there's order in the court or ensure that someone is getting a fair trial. The executive branch checks the judicial branch because the president appoints judges, all right, and the president also pardons, commutes, grants reprieves, and grants amnesty. All right, and we should know what that is from our checks and balances notes. And the legislative branch checks the judicial branch because Congress sets up the number of courts and justices. Congress can amend the Constitution. Congress impeaches judges. All right, and the Senate approves judges' appointments because, you know, the Senate's job is to approve stuff, okay? The judicial branch can check the executive branch by declaring executive actions unconstitutional, and it can check the legislative branch by declaring laws unconstitutional. Okay, so if Congress passes a law that goes directly against the Constitution, the Supreme Court can review it and strike it down so that that law does not get enforced and does not get interpreted. So likewise, if the president decides to put out some kind of policy or does some kind of action that goes against the Constitution, the Supreme Court can review that and strike down that action so that it does not happen to anyone. We know that Article 6, because we know that V means 5, and if the I is on the right, we add it. Article 6 says that the Constitution is supreme. Let's eat Jolly Ranchers and sip. S for supreme. So therefore, judges base their decision on what the Constitution says. Judges often look back at previous decisions called precedent, because pre means before, to rule on a case. And federal judges get their job when they are appointed by the president and approved by the Senate. However, state judges are elected. State judges are elected. All right, moving on. Let's do a little bit of intro here. All right, you know how I love this little federalism funnel, so go ahead and draw it, or fill it in on your note sheet, rather. Federal courts, state courts, and local/municipal courts. All right, this M word, municipal, just means having to do with a town or a city. So local or municipal courts. All right, and so in each of these levels, okay, within the federal court system, there are 3 levels, and within the state court system, there are 4 levels. So we're going to put a little cake, so to speak, into the federal court slot here and a cake into the state court slot here too. And that'll make a little more sense as we go along. All right, so qualifications. What do you have to do or be in order to become a federal judge? Literally nothing. You have to be a human and have a pulse. There are no qualifications. There's nothing about age, nothing about education, nothing about where you have to live, how long you have to live there, your citizenship, nothing. There are no qualifications. The Constitution did not state that there were any qualifications to be a federal judge. All you have to do to get that job is to be a human, have a pulse, be appointed by the president and approved by, hope you know because it's a question coming up. All right, that's all you have to do. There are no qualifications. I put this in all caps, put a star beside it, dramatically mark something, okay? Make sure you know that there are no qualifications. So when you stumble upon a question that looks like this on your test, you do not make up random qualifications, okay? There are none. It's not a thing, which is a little scary, but we'll talk about why that is in a second. All right, so since the senators have to approve stuff, all right, if the senator is from your home state and if the judge is from your home state and you're like, whoa, I know this guy. Why didn't anybody tell me that I was voting on this person? I know them. They're from my home state. Okay, before a senator gets blindsided like that with a vote on a judge that they already know, the president goes to the senators from their home state and asks their opinion of the person who is supposed to be approved. Okay, so if the president wants to nominate Joe Dirt from North Carolina, he will go to our 2 senators, Tom Tillis and Richard Burr, and say, hey, I'm going to appoint Joe Dirt to federal district court. What do you think about Joe Dirt? Is he a good judge? Not so much. Do I need to pick someone else? And the senators give, and then the senators give their opinion on this person. All right, next up we're going to talk about state judges, going down the line here. All right, to be a state judge, look at all these qualifications. All right, compared to the federal judges, state judges have 5 qualifications. Federal judges have 0. All right, you got to be old enough to hold your liquor. You must be able to practice law. A crazy concept. All right, if you're going to interpret the law, you need to know what it says. Okay, you have to be a registered voter, which means that you are over 18, that you are not a felon serving out a sentence somewhere in your community, and that you are not mentally disabled and you have an address. Okay, got to be a registered voter. You must live in the district. Okay, if you don't know what the laws are in your district, how in the world are you going to interpret them? Okay, you are elected by the people. You get an 8-year term, but you can serve as many 8-year terms as you want. There is no total term limit. So if the people keep electing you, you can continue to do what is called sitting on the bench. Okay, this is usually a bad term. Like if you're like, you're a bench warmer, you don't go into the game. All right, you don't play. You just sit there and wear your warm-ups and look pretty. Okay, now if a judge is sitting on a bench, that means that they're doing their job. Okay, all right, here we go. Benefits. All right, so what do you actually receive for being a judge? Federal judges have a pretty nice gig here. All right, they serve for life. Okay, once you get a job as a federal judge, you cannot get fired for the decisions that you make. Now, if you break a law, or you get caught with a DUI, or it's found out that you're being unethical, aka you're breaking a law, or you're doing something shady that you shouldn't be doing as a judge, you're going to get impeached by Congress. All right, they're going to kick you right up out of your job, but you serve for life. You cannot get fired because somebody doesn't like the decision that you made about a law or the sentence that you gave to someone. All right, you also cannot get a pay cut. All right, you can get a pay increase, but your pay can never be decreased. All right, so if you're wondering why this is so that judges can be unbiased. All right, the founder wrote Article 3. We're gonna make sure. They sat around and said this in much fancier language, but they essentially said this, that if you are a judge, you cannot get a pay cut ever in your life, and you cannot be fired for the decisions that you make about the United States Constitution. This is so we can be unbiased, all right? So if a judge is worried, if they get their job from a political party, and the political party does not like the decision that they made, they're going to get fired or their pay is going to get cut because Congress is in charge of writing the law, making the law that gets them kicked out of office or gets their salary decreased. So if a political party is the one putting food on your table instead of the United States Constitution, then your decisions as a judge are going to be based on what that political party wants and not what the law actually says, okay? So we want to make sure that they are unbiased. All right, so how do we know what judge gets to rule on what case? This is called jurisdiction, okay? Jurisdiction, let's define it, is the authority to give orders in a certain area. So if I get pulled over in Wake County by a Johnston County sheriff, they cannot write me a ticket, okay, because that's not their county, that's not their area to give authority, right? That's not their jurisdiction. All right, so judges have jurisdiction, but instead of it being just a county, their jurisdiction is about a type of law or when a case has moved through the federal or state level of courts. All right, so hope you know what authority versus power is because there's a question coming up. All right, so our first type of jurisdiction is original, or OJ, not O.J. Simpson, not orange juice. All right, OJ is an original jurisdiction. All right, they have the authority to hear a case the first time it is presented. So the first time you walk up into court with your nice, pretty orange jumpsuit and your fake heads and your bracelets on your wrists, the very first time that a judge has looked at you, told you what your case is, and the first time you present it to a jury, that's called original jurisdiction. Okay, original. Right, district levels and sometimes Supreme Courts have it, and this will make a little more sense as we go through the levels in the next video. And I'll touch back base on jurisdiction. All right, so original means you have the authority to hear a case the very first time it is presented. Okay, so district and sometimes Supreme Courts have this. All right, next is appellate. All right, this is not appellate, appellate. All right, they hear a case the second time and other times, and they review a case to decide if the law was applied fairly to you. So if the the judge asks the jury in your case and says, how do you find the defendant? And the little foreman stands up and says, we find the defendant guilty. Ooh, rough time. All right, you've now been convicted of a crime, and at some point you're probably going to wind up in prison. Now, if you feel as though your verdict is wrong because the law was applied unfairly, right? Every convict's going to be like, I didn't do it. Okay, sure you didn't, right? But if you get convicted or found guilty because the law is applied unfairly to you, you can appeal your decision, okay? You can appeal it. So you can write down a little petition, you and your lawyer together, and say, I want another set of judges to look over my case and see if the law was actually applied unfairly to me or not, okay? So appeals courts have appellate jurisdiction. So we're going to abbreviate this AP. AP. Write that in parentheses beside the title appellate, AP. All right, so the Supreme Court and appeals courts sometimes, appeals courts always have this, all right, and sometimes the Supreme Court has this too. All right, our third kind of jurisdiction is exclusive, all right? This means only one certain court has the authority to hear your case. If you and your girl or you and your man are exclusive, all right, you are the only one who is supposed to be dating them, all right? Just one, exclusive, all right? If a TV station has an exclusive interview with a celebrity, they are the only TV station who is interviewing that celebrity, okay? Some examples of this that you will see very soon, like on a quiz or test somewhere, are maritime law or counterfeiting money, all right? Making money, actually printing it out or stamping down some coins, is a federal power, okay? So only the federal courts, only federal district court is going to hear this case. All right, maritime law, aka laws on the water, so like if you're caught trying to smuggle drugs or smuggle people from Cuba over to the United States, that is maritime law, and you're going to find yourself in federal district court. If you break a federal law, you're going to federal court. If you break a state law, you're going to state court, all right? So that is exclusive. Then the very last one is a word we've seen before. It is concurrent. Concurrent, all right? So that means that you share jurisdiction. We know that a concurrent power, like taxes or courts or prison, all right, is shared between the federal and state levels. Concurrent jurisdiction is the same way, okay? So multiple courts, more than one, have the authority to hear a case the first time, and they can fight over it. So, for example, murder or armed robbery in multiple states, okay? So murder is both a federal and a state crime. So you could wind up in federal or state court, all right? So that's concurrent. They share it, all right? As in exclusive, like if murder is a federal and a state crime, and then you could go to either federal or state court. However, if you try to assassinate the president, that's breaking a federal law, so you're only going to go to federal court, which is exclusive jurisdiction, okay? All right. So Article 3, don't write this down. Basically, what Article 3 in the United States Constitution says, please notice how at no point in this little Article 3 does anyone say anything about a qualification for a judge. They set up the Supreme Court, so the judicial power of the United States, aka the power to interpret the law, shall be vested or given to one Supreme Court, just one. We only have one of them. There's 9 people who sit in it. That's it. All right, and such inferior courts like district and appellate as the Congress from time to time, create. All right, so the judges, skip ahead, shall hold their offices, aka keep their job during good behavior, so don't break a law, and shall receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished. Okay, so they will get a paycheck compensation for their services interpreting the law, which cannot be diminished. They cannot get a pay cut. Nowhere in here does it say anything about qualifications. There are none. Okay, so how many courts are set up? And what does it say about federal judges? Hope you can answer this question. All right, moving on. So we got another Judiciary Act. All right, you know Congress loves to write some laws and make some acts. All right, this one says how many people are in the court, not just that there is a court. All right, that the Supreme Court of the United States, shall have a Chief Justice and 5 Associate Justices. So we start out with 6 people total. 1 plus 5 is 6. Any 4 of whom shall be a quorum. All right, talk about a quorum in a second. And the United States, shall be divided into 13 districts. There's a court called district court, and a district judge works in district court. All right, basically, we started out with 6 people in our Supreme Court. All right, so how many SCOTUS judges? Just answered that. How many district courts and judges? Hope you were paying attention. All right, speaking of the next one, what is a quorum? It's when enough people are present to be productive. Okay, so at one point in time, I had a class full of 30 children, at 21 boys and 9 girls, and the vast majority of all the boys in my class were athletes. All right, so half of the men's track team was in my 4th period. I also had a couple softball players and a golf person, as well as a couple people in the band. So when we had a track meet and a band competition of some kind and a softball game on the same day, I had 9 people in my room. 9 people out of 30. That is not enough people for me to be productive. I am not teaching a lesson. We did review. Okay? A quorum is when enough people are present for you to be productive. Okay? All right. And that has been Intro to the Judicial Branch.